Coming at you from the ATL, from inside the paint and beyond the arc. This is Nothin But Nest, your Atlanta Hawks podcast. Now, here are your hosts, DeShaun Tate and Caleb Johnson.
Welcome into Nothin But Nest, episode 34. Caleb Johnson here with my co-host DeShaun Tate as we talk all thing Atlanta Hawks on this Odyssey podcast that we thankfully get to do 2 times a week. Normally come to you on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Sometimes it's a little later. You know, we just kind of make it up as we go, especially as the Atlanta Hawks schedule changes around and all those sorts of things. It almost, though, DeShaun, I really could have gone without doing this podcast simply for the fact of, like, I really don't want to talk about this Miami trip, but it happened. So, yay. We get to talk about it, and DeShaun, get to, for the next 40 minutes or so, try to not be an 11 hater.
Okay.
Because, man, do I really want to put some blame on number 11, while also realizing guys are allowed to have off games, off week, whatever you want to call it. These things happen. It's just, man, it's getting harder and harder to believe that this is a team we should be taking seriously come postseason time. The way that one DeShaun Tate was telling me, this Atlanta Hawks team, man, you better get on the train, Caleb. You better get on because, this team's going on a roll. And then we go into Miami and 2 straight losses. One on what? Was that Friday, Saturday? That was Saturday. Saturday they lose 117-109 to the Miami Heat. Never really was competitive in that one. And then the more competitive one that just ended in a kind of grabbing your head and just going, there we go again. The Hawks lose 130-128 on Monday night. So, DeShaun, am I seeing this all wrong, or are you starting to become concerned about thinking that this thing was truly going to turn around after the All-Star break?
Yeah, I definitely, one thing that I definitely said is that, number one, I could be definitely more than wrong. It wouldn't be the first time. But even more so, I knew exactly how crazy that it sounded talking about them maybe turning some things around, or that they would turn some things around. I think that they have in some ways definitely look more improved, or maybe just more locked in a little bit more, maybe a little bit more focused. Certainly not in all aspects.
Okay.
But in some areas that I think were concerning before, I don't see that as concerning as it once was. Obviously, it takes time. You got a new coach in place, but that's not making any excuses, because one thing that has not changed is you still got the same guys efforting to put the ball in the basket as you did before.
Yeah.
So, you won't hear a single excuse out of me. It's beginning to look more and more, even though it's still maybe not a lot of basketball left. There's still some significant basketball left. That's the fairest way probably to say it. It's starting to clearly look more and more like maybe this whole going on a run thing is not going to happen until next year. So there is that. There's definitely that vibe. I don't think we're at a point yet where we can say, and I know we're going to talk about this a little bit later, the Hawks is good for surprising people. I mean, we talked about it. I mentioned something to you about how they had to break even over the next 4 games going into the first one against Miami. They had to go, at least 500 and then take care of business and go 2-0 or 2-0, I guess, if O is a letter, 2-0 in the nation's capital, which we haven't seen just yet. We're going to get ready to see that really soon. But they've already disappointed. Forget about just keeping it competitive. This is not a very good Miami team either. I think sometimes people tend to put a little bit more emphasis on certain things than others. I don't think that this is an atrocious Miami team, but I think it's clear that they're not the same Miami team that they have been in past years. Let's just put it that way. Either way it goes, they still fail to exceed, let alone meet the expectations, because forget about being competitive. That's a basketball game, specifically the second one in Miami, that you have to win. Now you're going into a situation where you have to put even more emphasis and urgency on the games in Washington. And you owe them, because it wasn't that long ago, within about a week, maybe, not even a whole week, that you brought Washington into your house and found a way to lose that game. So back to the drawing board we go, Caleb, and we just gotta wait and see.
Yeah, I think it's still weird to me that Miami has really become kryptonite for Trae Young. Like I told you when I started this, I was going to try to talk for 40 minutes or so and not be a Trae hater. And I'm really not. It's just simply kind of like does Jimmy Butler and Eric Spoelstra, they've got Trae figured out. Like if other teams could figure out how to stop Trae the way that Jimmy Butler and Eric Spoelstra are able to, there would be massive problems for the Atlanta Hawks. It's just strange. So specifically, that game on Saturday, Trae had his lowest total points of the season. He scored 8 points. That's it. He was 0 for 5 from 3-point. But it was not just Trae Young who struggled in this one, as it seems like a lot of the times when Trae's hot, DeJounte's hot, and when DeJounte's not hot, Trae's not hot, vice versa, all of these sorts of things. Those two have been playing pretty connected as of late. Well, Trae has 8 points. DeJounte only had 10. And DeJounte was 0 for 5 in that first game in Miami against from 3. So you've got your two best players against the Miami Heat go 0 for 10 from 3-point. Like, you're setting yourself up. No way you can win a game like that. I thought the bench was really impressive in that first game. They had 55 points total of the team's points, and I think Saddiq Bey, he led the Hawks to like 22. So if you want to take some positive things away, they really got embarrassed, I think, to start out that game on Saturday against the Miami Heat, just right out of the gate. I'll be honest with you, I turned that game on, and after the first quarter, I was like, all right, so, yeah. Oh, Caitlin, you wanted to put a movie on? All right, cool. I'll keep the game up on my laptop. You put a movie on, and for the rest of the game, I was doing that whole situation of looking down, being like, this is not fun. Okay. Oh, Creed. Yeah. I like this movie. It was just awful, quite honestly. And I was impressed, and I think Quinn Snyder, the Hawks head coach, did kind of give the Hawks some credit in Game 2 on Monday, of the fact of like, yeah, okay, you came out strong in Game 2. Like, they didn't lay down entirely. But it's just weird to me that this Miami Heat team gives Trae specifically, but the Hawks just in general, so many problems, even when, to your point, they're not particularly a good team this year.
First and foremost, before we go any further, let's see that shirt you wearing, Caleb. Because I'm not sure you're doing a whole lot of that right now.
Oh no, I'm not.
It's like we call it false flag.
No. You know what? Honestly, DeShaun, I shouldn't wear this shirt anymore. I should probably treat this situation much like the Atlanta Hawks, who I don't know. Did we have this conversation that in the Atlanta Hawks training facility at the Emory Healthcare Center, whatever it's called, on the like walls for this past year that Nate McMillan was head coach, it had 3 C's. Coach Nate McMillan's 3 C's up there. What was it? Calm, clear, connected. We're up on behind all of the goals around the Emory Healthcare Center. After they fired Nate McMillan.
Yeah, that's not there anymore because I remember
Yeah.
when I came in for the release, it's different.
They took it down. They took
Yeah.
it down like 2 days after this man got fired and when they brought in a new head coach. And it was brought up to my attention, and someone was like, well, they fired the man. And I was thinking, I mean, it doesn't make the principles any less true or like something that you would want to have around. But no, they wanted to remove any remnants of Nate McMillan around the facility. And
was it okay for Joe to have his own principles?
He could have. They could have put something up there, but as far as I know, Joe didn't have anything that he wanted put up on the walls. We'll find out if maybe Quinn Snyder has his 3 somethings, or I don't know, some phrase that he wants to use to motivate his team. But believe this was all Nate McMillan. This was all 2021 Nate McMillan telling his team he wanted them to believe. So if the Hawks don't have to implement their 3 C's anymore, I don't have to believe. They just have to do a lot better job of convincing me.
No, I understand that part too. And when you're talking about Miami, I do understand the instances where you go into the whole boxing analogies where styles make fights, and sometimes it is just really bad matchups. And I think that in terms of Trey, not only is that kind of like an Achilles heel for him playing against Miami, particularly even more so on the road, but it gives you that feel of no matter where they play. It could be at State Farm Arena, it could be on the moon. It's not going to make a difference. They're defensive minded. They have that kind of scheme. That's the kind of system that they have put into place. And it sounds like a bit much, but it just feels like I would rather be beaten by Charlotte the way that I have. Like, I would be okay to maybe excuse 1 or 2 of the Charlotte losses because they lost. What are they, 1-3 this year against Charlotte? I would be willing to excuse 2 of the Charlotte losses in exchange for a somewhat confident win in Miami on the road. And they clearly have their number. It didn't matter about the DeJounte Murray. It didn't matter about the coaching change. It just hasn't mattered. You talked about how poorly Trey shot that first game, even DeJounte Murray even more so. How about 2 for 11 from 3 combined in the second game?
Right.
That's already bad enough as it is on top of that. So it's collectively as a unit all across the board that this team is struggling with this team. And people are looking for the quick turnaround with the new coach, and I get that. I have some of those my own expectations when it comes to that as well. Maybe not necessarily have to result in wins, but just looking better. And that was a game that I felt like the Atlanta Hawks could have won, should have won, talking about the second one in Miami, but obviously they didn't pull through. It's clear that what I was saying is definitely not going to be the case for this team on the second half of the or on the other side of the All-Star break, like I anticipated.
The part that's strange to me, DeShaun, is
I'm not done believing yet, though, Caleb. I just want to throw that out there. I'm not done believing yet.
Hey, and look, I'll be first in line if this team all of a sudden turns things around. I'll be first in line to jump on that bandwagon and to be along for the fun ride, because I got to tell you, I was there for 2021. That was incredible. That was an incredibly busy time in my life, but it was so much fun. And when it was all done, I was kind of like, man, I'm ready to do that all over again. And haven't been able to because things haven't worked out necessarily great since that moment. But yeah, so you mentioned game 2 against the Heat, where the Hawks still did not shoot well from 3-point, specifically Trae Young and DeJounte Murray, and where DeJounte Murray, do you know his one made three came in the closing second of the game?
Of course it did.
Yeah,
It did.
where well, DeJounte might have helped out some degenerate gamblers who were concerned about the money line, because then that three kept things within the spread, and so I thought it was kind of funny that all went down like that. So and it also helps, DeJounte's got this nice little contract kicker that comes in. If he knocks down 150 threes this season, he gets an extra $500,000 in his contract. Right now, I can't remember the exact number. I had it pulled up. I believe he's at 133 3-pointers, so well within reach for him to get to. But you shoot 0 for 5 one night, and then 1 for 6 the other. It's not really, helping those odds. The Trey and DeJounte did play better, though, in Game 2. Trey finished with 25 points. DeJounte Murray, 23. It really just kind of felt like that second half that Eric Spoelstra went back to the drawing board of like what had worked for the Heat in Game 1, and then just kind of gave it to the Hawks. And Atlanta, stays competitive, and well, then that turnover happened late. It's Caleb Martin, picked Trey's pocket and then send it down the other side of the floor. Jimmy Butler ends up with some free throws, and that kind of sealed it. I mean, the Hawks tried to get back into it, but at that point it was really out of reach. And so I did not expect – I thought that the odds of – after the Hawks beating the Trailblazers on Friday, all right, you got some good momentum going. Going to Miami, I was like, okay, winning both of those games, probably unlikely. Splitting it seems the most realistic. Dropping both of them and coming to DC against a team who really kind of gave you the business in Coach Quinn Snyder's first game, at least physically, and now you're below 500. And now there's another element of this that we'll get into in a bit when we specifically look at the DC series of how the Eastern Conference is starting to shake out. But specifically when it comes to Miami, you could have won the first game, you would have taken over the 7th seed in the East. And then you lost both of them, and now you are really just, I don't think it's possible to get up to that 7th seed now with the distance that Miami's created, unless maybe Brooklyn just drops out of nowhere and you catch Brooklyn. But it's just it really feels like they made things very difficult for themselves, DeShaun. And then let's throw this aspect in there, because I was very quick to shut you down on our last podcast when you brought up one AJ Griffin. Do you know how many minutes in the last 3 games that AJ Griffin has played?
No, educate me, Caleb.
In the last 3 games, AJ Griffin has played 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Now, I came at you pretty abruptly. It was I did too much there, DeShaun. Where I was like, no, I don't even want to get in, because I had just been dealing with this conversation with a few other people about like, oh, come on now, AJ's not getting his minutes. And it was like, no, Quinn gave us a reason of he wanted to get AJ some rest. And, this is the most minutes he's ever played in his NBA career, most games, all those sorts of things. However, I didn't think it was going to go this long. Like I mean, a game or two, sure, but you're telling me AJ Griffin couldn't have helped the Atlanta Hawks against the Miami Heat? I'm having a hard time with that, DeShaun.
I agree. Being able to find the floor, find some time on it somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't know what really alluded to, what was the warning sign behind him needing that kind of rest.
Well, the numbers, like, I mean, like, he had been shooting pretty poorly leading up to the All-Star break. And so that was kind of a clear sign of the rookie wall. And then we came back from that, and I'll pull it up right now in front of us so we can have it. Let's see. Since the All-Star break. All right. He played 18 minutes against Cleveland, was 4 of 7, so decent night, and had 9 points. Against Brooklyn, he was 0 for 3 in 13 minutes, 0 for 2 from 3-point, 2 points. Against Washington, in 16 minutes, 1 for 4, missed all of his threes, scored 2 points. And then he played 2 minutes against Portland on Friday, and he missed the only 3 that he shot.
I think my thing is, one of the first things is that I think that they're definitely, and I saw this coming out of Duke, is that there needed to be some sort of improvement more so on the defensive side of the ball. Mm-hmm. The lateral movement just not really quite being there. Is there something that he could have done to help them out in these last couple of games? Absolutely. I don't question that at all. Especially when you've got some of the guys, shooting as poorly as they have over that same span. But I also understand the defensive liability as well. You're not the only one on this team with defensive liability.
Sure.
So I get that part too. Stops is obviously not only a very important thing and part of this game, but at this time of the season is when you definitely got to have those too. I like to think that he still should have been able to see the floor, at least more. You're talking about 2 minutes. I mean, it's kind of a slap in the face to the guy that helped put you in position to at least be in the 8th spot, if I'm just being honest, and played a really big part of that. So I get, I do get that. This team needs some help.
Can I tell you my suspicion about this whole situation?
Sure.
This is my do I have any I don't have any tinfoil around. But this is my tinfoil hat suspicion when it comes to what's happening. Why all of a sudden is AJ Griffin not able to get minutes? Do you know who is getting minutes right now? Who had not previously been getting minutes?
Talk to me.
Jalen Johnson.
Sure.
We heard Quinn Snyder was one to say it at a practice that I was at. That was last week. Wow. Feels like it's longer than that. But Quinn Snyder said in practice that, minutes are going to be hard to come by. Teams don't do this whole 10, 11-man bench. So it's going to be matchups, whether we see AJ or Jalen. And then also AJ's hit a rookie wall. And so, we're going to be careful with his minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, does Quinn Snyder have some big decisions when it comes to the power forward position next season? Yes, he does. Because right now, he's paying a guy $25 million a year who, to say John Collins is underperforming, especially as of late, would be a very fair statement to make. I think, DeShaun, that Quinn Snyder is trying to see what he's got in Jalen Johnson at the quote-unquote expense of A.J. Griffin, because he knows what he's got in A.J. Griffin. He knows DeShaun's nickname, the Silent Killer. He knows he's got a silent killer in A.J. Griffin, and I think he doesn't know yet completely what he's got in
Jalen Johnson.
And maybe that this is like a development thing, and I need to boost your confidence going into next season because we might need you because you might be starting or at least playing a lot more minutes than right. scary. The thought is scary, but it exists. I would think that if moves happen to be made, maybe he's not starting. That's extreme. That Sadiq would take that spot, but
even then, yeah,
he still would be playing a lot more minutes. So that's my tinfoil hat conspiracy theory is that Quinn is using this opportunity to go, well, AJ hit the rookie wall. Let's get him some time off because I really have got to figure out what I have in Jalen Johnson. And the reason why Jalen Johnson didn't play under Nate McMillan was because Nate was pretty obvious in saying, I'm here to win. I'm not here to develop guys. I'm not here to experiment. I'm here to win. And I don't think he saw his best winning odds coming with Jalen. And, you know, the Hawks have got to get the best opportunity they can out of him, though, or move on. You know, if this is not working, move on and figure out, let him get a new opportunity somewhere else.
I think with guys like Jalen, you know, we've had these conversations about him and the improvement that he's made. Mm-hmm. To what degree? How significant? That's
roller coaster.
That's a personal, opinion, if you will. But you know, there was always for me. Not the potential, not the ability to stretch the floor and shoot the three, but the physicality, the aggression are the things that I clearly had questioned. I just think that, you know, we're seeing guys like this see the floor as much as we are because that's just more so something that's very telling and more obvious to the options that you don't have on the bench.
Sure.
That's kind of where I am with Jalen. But the finger is pointed at everybody for what we've been seeing. Nobody is exempt here. Everybody from, 11 to the last guy on the bench that's getting some time.
27. Number 27 is his number, DeShaun. I just want to not 99, not 99.
I thought it was 99 for. I thought it was 00. It probably should have been 00.
You gotta give V more credit than that, man.
More credit than 00?
Yeah.
Why?
He's a great 3-point shooter. He started in OKC. Come on now. Give that man some more respect.
Like I said, let's let you know what. Since we're developing and trying all these new things, let's just roll him out there for the starting lineup. Why don't we?
Whoa. Starting. Whoa.
Well, let's just give him some minutes. I don't see him on the floor. And again, this isn't, a time to completely bash, but again, I'll be honest with you. Like, if it's somebody that's going to go out, if I'm the head coach in Quinn Snyder and guys aren't playing with the enthusiasm and the urgency that you feel like you need to see, maybe that's how you make your statement. Maybe you go bring somebody else in and pull these other guys off and say, hey, listen, I don't care what you're doing. I don't care how much money you're making. Like, the reality of it is this, and you're not playing Hawks basketball. You got to be able to dig down deep, have some pride. I don't know if you need to take a walk with guys down memory lane to, kind of reiterate what they were before they became a Hawk and how great that they were and all these other things. I don't know if that's something that you'll need to do. But Quinn has got to come in here with something he's also got to be given some things. The bench is something that, he inherited.
Sure.
And that's something he knew about in advance. But, it would be crazy to put all this blame on 11. It would be crazy to put, all this blame on, Jalen. It would be crazy. It would be oddly disrespectful and inhumane to put any of this blame on number 99. All things being considered, though, Caleb, is that changes have to be made. And I think that it starts in the locker room. You have to have that piece that's going to pull everybody aside and say, hey, to hell with the phones, to hell with the individual, success and accolades amongst other things. Who's ready to go out there and play basketball hard for 48 minutes? Forgetting about the score that's being kept and everything else, who wants to go out there to play the way that we know that we are capable of and that we have to play in order for the success and the dreams, goals, aspirations to come true. It's gonna take a little bit of time with this new coach. And even though, despite what we just saw in South Beach, I still like to think that there is some optimism and upward trajectory to a degree, but it's not going to be easy. We just talked about after Washington, you're going to have Boston.
Mm-hmm.
Surprised me to see them, have such a tight game with Boston, much like Miami, or even beat Boston. I know it sounds super wild, but I don't think it is outside of the realm of possibility, even as a completely healthy team. That may not necessarily be saying much, and I don't want to throw crap against the wall just to see if it sticks, but that's just who this Hawks team is. We've talked about it time and time again. The only consistency has been that they have been consistently inconsistent, and they've got to find a way to shake that, and it's got to happen sooner than like yesterday.
While you were talking about that, you're talking about, they need that kind of guy in the locker room. You made me think. So the Atlanta Hawks need Steven Adams in the locker room because, Steven Adams has been making some news cycles as of late as a guy who was in Memphis saying, hey, guys, we got to grow up. We got to play better. We got to do all of these things that we're not doing right now. A guy, that kind of voice, very rare to find in the NBA, I think, anymore. We've talked about this a little bit in the past of just based on people's contracts, it becomes difficult for you to get that veteran because you can most likely get a player of that caliber cheaper.
Sure.
As a really young guy. And so you lose those veteran voices in the locker, and then you maybe don't have the most mature team. But I brought up Steven Adams because I did warn you ahead of time that I wanted to veer off the path momentarily from the Atlanta Hawks. Because I feel like this story has been really, kind of came out of nowhere, kind of didn't, and has really been a wake-up call, I feel like, to a lot of people in the NBA, because we haven't had a situation like this since, Gilbert Arenas?
Yeah.
I think Gilbert Arenas was the last time we had a player...
Arenas and Crittenton, yeah.
Yeah, and involved in a situation where a gun was involved, and it led to a suspension.
Sure.
Now, what are we talking about? That is Ja Morant, a guy who maybe not for his own fault, but I like to kind of root against now, mainly because I don't like that Memphis Grizzlies team because I think they've done a whole lot of talking without putting up a whole lot of results.
Yep.
They also seem to be a team with guys who want to act a different way from the way that they actually are. Which leads us to Ja Morant, who was suspended 2 games by the NBA because he was on Instagram Live at a nightclub brandishing a gun. And that's a no-no for the NBA because of gun issues this league has had in the past. That makes it really easy for people who don't pay attention to the league to pass judgment on players and to, try to create some narrative that the NBA is full of thugs and things like that. It's totally untrue, but it opens the door for that narrative to kind of come in. And so the reason why I wanted to bring this up to you, DeShaun, just to kind of see, what did you make of the situation of Ja? He's not only getting brought into the media because of this gun issue this time, but there was an issue against the Pacers that maybe something happened. There was an issue of a security guard last year and a kid that maybe he beat up after a pickup game. Like, I feel like Hawks fans, we might not love Trae Young for some of the on the court stuff and some of the off the court stuff that seems like there's maturity issues, but you have to feel like you're pretty lucky to be a Hawks fan right now and have Trae Young as your star when you're seeing what's going on with Ja.
Yeah, and you know what? I talked to quite a few people prior to this even happening at all.
Okay.
And I heard a lot of people talking about how they would have much rather had Ja Morant. Oh, well, you don't see Ja Morant struggling like this, and you don't see Ja Morant struggling like that. And he came in after Trae and this, that, and the third and everything else, which is, it is what it is.
Sure.
And I think I saw you mention something about this in the reply to all of it, or the apology. Is really, first of all, it's really hard to sympathize with the guy based on things like this, because it's something that can be prevented. Now you got to look at it, being traveled across state lines and all of these other things, with these gun rules and whatever else.
And just one other element of this, DeShaun, that I actually found out about rather recently is that the league, and I did not know this, has a strict gun policy when it comes to it being brought in the locker room. And so 50-game suspension is what I heard. And so I haven't seen that confirmed yet. I've seen some NBA reporters put that out there. I have not physically laid my eyes on the NBA bylaws to see 50-game suspension for the gun in the locker room. But the assumption is, if Ja had it at the nightclub, he had to have had it with him in his bag in the locker room, which would make this not just a 2-game suspension, but a 50-game suspension. And for those math people who are better at the math than I am, that means he would not play the rest of the season.
Yeah. And that's the other piece about it, though, too. Caleb, is that this is a team, like you said, has been doing a lot of mouthing off, a lot of talk about dynasties, and a lot of talk about how great they are. And I already felt my own personal way about just the arrogance that came along with some of that.
Sure.
Not only because you haven't achieved anything, but I just think that it's something that could hurt you more than it can help you. Let's just put it that way. Ja clearly made a bad decision. I can't tell you at age, what are we looking at? 23, 24?
Yeah, I think Ja might be 22, actually.
22. Can't guarantee you DeShaun Tate's decision-making was necessarily on par. Now, running up somewhere with, flashing, a pistol on social media, I think is a little over the top and definitely a bit much. And now you got so many other things to consider. But I'll say this:
he's 23.
23. Yeah. And I saw you post something on social media the other day and talking about, which you couldn't be more right, in terms of talking about bringing mental health into the situation.
Yeah.
Or appearing to. I feel like that's a cop-out. It's hard to believe that he even wrote his own apology.
Oh, he didn't. There's no way.
Yeah.
Well, let me, just for clarification, just for the purposes of us having this conversation, I'll read Ja's statement that he released after getting the suspension, and then my response to it that kind of leads us to this conversation. Ja says, "I take full responsibility for my actions last night. I'm sorry to my family, teammates, coaches, fans, partners, the city of Memphis, and the entire Grizzlies organization for letting you down. I'm going to take some time away to get help and work on learning better methods of dealing with stress and my overall well-being." Now, the guy that I saw on Instagram Live holding a
Yeah.
gun with 2 fingers up
Yeah.
here. Like, the man had clearly never held a gun in his life before that moment. At least he's never fired one because, he looked like, I want to hold this thing to look cool, but also to not fire it because, I don't want any accidental gunshots. Don't want a Plaxico Burress, a Gilbert Arenas situation going on. So we go from having fun in the club, get suspended 2 games for having a gun, to I'm going to take some time away to focus on my mental health for the stress that I've got going on in my life. And
sometimes I guess situations like these, Caleb, and I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine.
Maybe they are the things that warrant the help that you actually need. I find some of the comments a little hard to believe.
Yeah.
Just because I feel like it's even worse when your automatic go-to, and again, I don't know what he's going through, could be the most in the world, but it's kind of hard to believe when someone puts out that kind of an apology. There's just certain things that you just cannot afford to do. And that's just the reality of it. He's one of those positions. I mean, he just recently signed off with a new sponsor or something along those lines, I think, as of the last week. I can't remember if it was,
I was about to say, I just know his deal with Nike and the sneaker and all this
or something. Okay. Maybe, I don't know. I can't remember exactly, but
I bet they're feeling great.
Oh my goodness, more outstanding than anybody.
Does Smith and Wesson need a new guy to sponsor?
Yeah, man. Look, somebody's telling me NIL is what's in right now.
Hey, does Ruger? Does maybe Ruger wants to? I'm trying to think. What's a good gun company for beginners, because that was definitely Ja. That man's never been to a gun range, never fired a gun. I just couldn't get over. I'm sorry, and this is probably the wrong part of things to focus on. But
I get it. I mean, one of the first questions that come up is, okay, first of all, who's after you?
Yeah.
But even more so, and that could be a real thing. I mean, listen, you're in Memphis, Tennessee. There's safer
as someone
places.
who lived there,
exactly.
I'm very familiar. Yes.
And people will try you, just because of who you are. But that wasn't the issue. Like, this wasn't something that appeared to have been pushed on him. Like, this is something I voluntarily went and posted on my own. I don't know how much time, they're going to give him. I don't know the purpose behind, like, if the slap on the hand or whatever, what have you, the disciplinary action that the NBA, I would have anticipated putting in place, solely based on the fact that Memphis appeared to have had, made their own predetermined or I guess just kind of put the disciplinary piece out there before the NBA could put it that way. Self-imposed is what I was looking for. Thanks, Caleb. But it's so hurtful for the brand. It's so hurtful for him. Everything that's being represented. This is a team that had a chance to do some really great things, being second in the East. Second in the West last year in terms of seeding. Second in the West for a good bit this year in terms of seeding so far. Got, arguably the best defensive player this year in Jaren Jackson Jr., who you couldn't get to stay, healthy, who could not get to stay healthy. And now guys are dropping like flies also off of that team because of injury. You appear to have bitten off a little bit more than they can chew. And they're the ones who talk about immaturity and accountability. Well, yeah, it's not just happening over here. It's happening over there too. All those things make a difference. And I think it's really unfortunate that, sometimes I'm curious to know, like, well, you got something like that and you're waving it around, where you going to pull it on someone? And how dumb do you really have to be? If somebody's going to do it, maybe one of your buddies that you're running around with or whatever, what have you. But I just think that it's a bad look. It's a bad look for him. It's a bad look for this league. And there's just so much going on with gun laws and everything else already as it is. That's what's making this a lot more hard to fathom, if I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
Because of do you even have the permit? Like, are you even licensed to be able to care? Like, are any of these things actually in place?
Yeah.
It's
Well,
concerning for somebody like him. It really is.
and like you mentioned earlier, being in a different state matters too.
Yes,
As
it
what's
does.
Colorado's gun laws? How does
Yep.
that all come into play with
Yep.
everything? You talked about slap on the wrist sort of thing. I think this is an opportunity. I think Adam Silver is potentially going to make an example of Ja Morant, right, wrong, or indifferent,
Sure.
based on the stuff that we've heard earlier in the year. That had gone on with Indiana, that now when these other reports are coming out about the security guard and like I said, the
Yeah.
kid that he potentially beat up,
Yep.
that might have something going on. It just honestly, it feels like this is an opportunity for Adam Silver to step in and be like, hey, before anybody else gets a
Oh
bright
yeah.
idea,
Oh yeah.
we're going to shut this down. David Stern did this, 20 years ago, in the Allen Iverson era.
Yeah.
When he tried to crack down on the league and upset a lot of people. I don't think this is anything that is necessary league wide, but that's because it feels like Adam Silver could potentially nip this thing in the bud with Ja
Yeah.
and be like, hey, for anybody else who thinks you're going to come into the league and
That this is gonna fly. Yep.
yeah, nah, it's not going to happen. And that's why I wanted to bring this conversation up just for the simple fact of Hawks fans, you think maturity is just a problem in Atlanta? No.
Nope.
Not only is it not just a problem in Atlanta, it could be far worse. Because I do think of the aspect of Ja making himself like this is not a marketable opportunity for him. This is not going to make
Sure.
him look better. I think of how quickly the fans in Memphis are going to be like, is this the guy we want representing us? All of those sorts of things, right, wrong, or indifferent, are going to come up because he put himself in this situation.
In that position.
Yeah,
That's
he
correct.
didn't fall into this and accidentally and that and that. No. This was all 100% intentional, and now he's
Sure.
got to live with the consequences of that. You talk about this is part of the issue of guys coming into the NBA really young, getting money really young,
Yep.
because you talk about DeShaun Tate at 22. Hey,
Right.
I know I come from a very good family and clean cut, and I had a lot of good opportunities. I can't say I wasn't doing stupid stuff too at 22, but there's just a level of responsibility that has to come with that position, and sometimes we get reminded
We
of
do.
all of these things, and specifically for Hawks fans, how could be worse. Your superstar could be, being looked at legally and be suspended. And
Yep.
instead, we're just having to deal with a guy who has been having off shooting nights and scoring performances and having a really hard time against a specific team. Very quickly, before we get out of here, DeShaun, we've already mentioned it a few times, but just specifically, the Atlanta Hawks do play the Washington Wizards 2 times this week. Game 1 on Wednesday, game 2 also in Washington on Friday. It's kind of weird for the Hawks to do this back to back to back whole situation of staying in a city for 3 days and then going to a new city for essentially 3 days. I think maybe 4 to play the Wizards. Right now, this is how the Eastern Conference looks. The Miami Heat are the 7 seed. They are 12.5 games back. The Hawks are the 8th seed. They're 15 games back. Yeah,
Okay.
big jump. The
Of course.
Raptors in the 9th seed are 15 and a half games back, right there in striking distance for the Hawks. And then the Wizards are in the 10 seed, 16 games back.
Yeah.
So it's a situation where we were really kind of hoping the Hawks would put themselves in a position to fight for the 7th seed, maybe even jump up for the 6th seed. Now it feels like, DeShaun, this is a moment where the Hawks are just like, they got to stay alive to stay in the play-in tournament and not fall.
You took the words right out of my mouth, Caleb, to say the exact same thing. Like, who's to say that this thing isn't going downhill even faster?
Mm-hmm.
I still like to think that in those regards, the Hawks will eventually be okay, but you just got to beat those teams that you're supposed to beat. Like, had I asked you prior to the game against Washington, what happens? Those are games that you have to win, especially on your home floor. Then you start factoring in, the game, against Miami. Like, so there's going to be some things that are going to be a little bit more excusable than others. But you got another shot, at Washington. And while it's like you mentioned something earlier, Caleb, you said something along the lines, I'm paraphrasing, of course, something along the lines of how the Hawks could maybe break even on the road. But then, in those 2 games only.
Sure.
But they lose both of them. That was the likelihood. What do you feel like is the likelihood of what we will see in those next 2 games, both of them being at the nation's capital?
I think they split. Yeah. I think, once again, that's the most likely outcome is a split. You're going to have people extremely excited if you pull off both of these. And then I think, honestly, the Hawks could do something where if they win both games in DC, then you can come home and lose to the Boston Celtics. And I think most fans would go like, hey, we get it. You spent all your energy and you just didn't have it for Boston on Saturday. If you split, I think fans would be a little upset at losing to Boston on Saturday, but but then it'll be like, I don't know, if it was the Friday game that you lose. Anyway, there's all kinds of situations. However, the thing that I would be very concerned, if you lose both to Washington, the vibes would be bad. You come home to Boston, you lose. We're talking about starting next week with a 5-game losing streak.
Yeah.
I don't
see that. I don't see that happening, Caleb. Not in the foreseeable future, obviously. But they have to have the mentality that people are writing them off the way they are, and they have to know that it's happening for a reason, for a good reason. I'm not saying take into consideration and overanalyze the frustration that people have about this team.
Mm-hmm.
But you've gotta listen, you've gotta strap on that armor, and you've gotta be tough, and you've gotta be proud. Like, you have to it can't be just going through the motions and so forth. All of this can't be about having a new coach. It feels like people had already pre-planned their excuses in advance for when things don't necessarily go the way that, and the potential is there. Nobody's questioning that per se. But you got to find a way to finish games. I thought the way that Miami handled them in the postseason last year, that this one would have been such a more personable one, that they would have at least gotten a win there. But the Washington thing is not an excuse. Now, I don't want to treat it as it's past tense or like it happened already, because it hasn't. But we're going to continue, not just with the last game, not just with this game, but continue to assess and figure out what the Atlanta Hawks identity is, because I'm not sure that we even know. I'm not sure that they know.
No, they don't, and I don't know that they're going to find it until next season, quite honestly. If hope that's my hope, is that they find it at some point. I don't know. It feels a little late for them to find it now.
Yeah.
But we'll see. But that's our time. We're going to come back and talk to you guys in just a couple of days. Hopefully we're talking about a win and things going in a much more positive direction. Do all of the like, the subscribe, the follow, the tweet us, the everything that's going to make our bosses happy, and for you to be able to listen to us more often, as much as possible, as much as we're putting out content. But for my co-host DeShaun Tate, I'm Caleb Johnson. This has been Nothing But Nest.